Lord David Blencathra, welcome to the Mediabox. Your report is on the urgent need for electoral reform in Belarus, but in fact, it also says that there have never been fair elections in Belarus. So what is the situation?
Well, you're absolutely right. For the last 20 years, the Council of Europe have been asked to observe elections in Belarus by the Belarus authorities. And we have consistently reported the same flawed system. For example, there's no central electoral register, and different provinces could add the same name into different registers all the time. The main fault is that there is not a proper procedure for counting the ballots, in that people sign in to vote, but when they come to the count, there is no reconciliation between the ballot papers in the box they've counted, unused ballot papers, and the number of signatures. Therefore, it is wide open to fraud. They have early voting with ballot boxes wandering around the countryside. There is no security checks on them. The Central Electoral Commission is made up mainly, 90% of government representatives, and it does not permit all the people from other parties to participate. And then when you look at the next three election levels down, from the regional ones and the oblast and something called the district committees, right down to each polling station, again, it's all stuff full of party people from the governing party. So it's not fair there. So we've made that in our report. That's been consistently found, and we've come up with suggestions to improve it.
Now, Alexander Lukashenko has been in power as president ever since the position was created in, was it July 94? He's not about to want to shift, is he? So he won't be in favor of any sort of electoral reform that might endanger his position.
You could think that, or you could say that, I couldn't possibly think it. No, it is the case that when we set out to do this report, I don't want to come out with a report which is set out to bash the government. I wanted to make this report as neutral as possible, so that PACE, the Parliamentary Assembly, is in the position of presenting a full a la carte menu and saying, this is what we suggest, you, the Belarusian authorities, select these items, some of which we think are essential. We asked the Belarusian authorities and the President's office to respond to a questionnaire. They did not do so. We give them every opportunity to put in their input. I'm afraid they didn't do so. Civil society did, the opposition did, various other organizations responded. I'm grateful for that. It is a source of regret that the government of Belarus did not assist.
The Assembly was invited to observe the last elections in 2020, but turned it down for various reasons. Do you feel it would have been any different, any better, had you been there?
We carefully considered this. Yes, we got invited at the last moment to observe the presidential elections, but because of the time constraint and COVID, we could not do so. So some have said, our report is invalid, you didn't observe the last elections. But I led the mission there a year before to observe the same election law in effect. And for the last 20 years, it's been the same election rules. And in every case we've observed, we've identified it as flawed and not giving free and fair elections. So I think it is legitimate to conclude that since we did not observe the last election, that it was conducted on the same flawed rules as before, it had the same failings and was not free nor fair.
But of course, Lukashenko has a very powerful ally in Putin, and he has said, well, he's actually accused the West of trying to stage a coup in Belarus. That is not very helpful, is it?
It's not, and it's nonsensical, absolutely nonsensical. In preparing my report, which was approved by the Parliamentary Assembly plenary on Wednesday, in the preliminary discussions in the Political Affairs Committee, I was constantly accused by some of the Russian delegates, Mr. Kislyak, Mr. Trotsky, Mr. Kalashnikov, the wonderfully named Russian delegations, that we were dictating to Belarus. And I said, no, we're not. We're not dictating. Belarus invited us in over the last 20 years to observe. Of course, we're going to make a report. So we're not dictating to Belarus. Belarus is an independent country. We have offered a menu of things they can do if they want to join the Council of Europe and if they wish their elections to regard it as free and fair. That's not dictatorship. That is standing on the sidelines offering to help. If the opposition want to pick up our report, they can do so.
Are you hopeful that there will be change in the foreseeable future as long as Lukashenko is alive?
I think that's in some ways above my pay grade. I don't want to destroy the neutrality of my report by commenting on that because I'm trying to be, we're not neutral on what's happening in Belarus. We all denounce the appalling human rights abuses. That is just not acceptable. But I don't want my report to be tainted any more than some of the Russian delegations are already claiming that it's biased, it's political distortion, it's there to help the opposition. Our report is there to help President Lukashenko if he wishes to change the election law. It's there to help the opposition if they wish to do so. The other point I'd make is I do hear mumblings coming from some of the Russian delegation at PACE that, oh, don't worry about election law reform. The president is looking at constitutional law reform. Now, we must not be beguiled into believing that constitutional law reform is any substitute for election law reform. And the constitutional law reform they may be looking at is the election system. Should it be first past the post or proportional representation? It may look at the balance of power between the president and the parliament, or between both houses of parliament. All legitimate questions. But constitutional reform does not take the place of proper, free and fair elections, not rigged counting, not rigged ballots, not political government appointees interfering with the election process. A totally separate matter.
Lord Blencathra, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for taking part.